So when we look at it, we're actually able to look at low voltage monitoring, enhanced power quality, improving the customer service, and so forth. And this particular slide is showing us where we actually are able to go in and look at the performance of the transformer. That is when it happens or before it happens. And we're also using it to go back for planning. And we've presently got 23 major standards and processes in the company that we're updating based on the information that we're gaining out of this. The net effect of that has been a dramatic improvement in terms of the problem resolution. You can see it falling off. If you take a look at the fact that not only are we finding it, what this slide is showing is these were our customer complaints, and they go up by year. 2009 is basically the flat line at the bottom. And what that means is since we have implemented this system, our number of customer complaints related to voltage problems has decreased to 0. We haven't had any. As you can see in the previous years, even in 2007, the red line at the top, it was going up very, very quickly. And when we did this, we did not change or improve any transformers or anything else. So it wasn't caused by us actually going out and improving the grid. It was caused by us improving the way we operate the grid. So this last one is just a few slides, a few points that I wanted to make. One of them is related to data ownership and allowed usage. It's becoming extremely critical. All of a sudden, we have all of this information on our customers, on our grid. Utilities are asking for it. Microsoft's asking for it. Google's asking for it. We're working with the state regulators to find out what we really can do, because some of the information requests are in direct conflict with other government standards such as CIP, the Cyber Information Protection. So if you're working on this data and you're obtaining it, it really becomes important to know what you can do with it, and you may very well have to work on your regulatory side. Another one is the data accuracy and quality increases as the automation increases, the need for it. We had things such as we were using standard GIS centerline, and that was just fine. But it wasn't fine when we got into this level of work because it couldn't tell which side of the street, and that had a big impact in terms of costing. We also had to do things like upgrade our GIS system because in the past we never had a need to have communications layers in our GIS. Now we do. And so consequently, it's affected a lot of systems in a lot of ways we hadn't initially anticipated. Another point was the providing less data, less off. Sometimes you need to provide less data less often than you might think. We actually thought that we wanted to get outage information very quickly, and we did. The problem was is because of reclosers and things in the system, we were actually reporting outages that the system was automatically recovering from, or things would recover, say, a tree branch or something brushing. So we had to go back out and actually stretch out timelines. So sometimes faster isn't always better, and certainly the amount of data we're getting, we're working on very hard as to what do we really need, how often. That brings up the point about it's not about the data. We're talking here about data, which is important, and the two speakers before me both spoke a lot about how do you process the data, how do you architect the data. My job on the business side is how do I turn that into useful information. And to do that, you absolutely have to work with your business customers. Also, another one that was mentioned, this was mentioned a couple of times, was this data warehouse issue. And what we're finding that's very interesting is that it's bringing to a head data warehousing versus applications. So for example, meter data management systems want to store the interval data. Is that the best place? Is it best to put it into an external engine? Is it best to put it back into one of our data warehouses? How much do we keep online? So within our organization, we had a split between those two areas, and it's actually caused some interesting challenges in terms of the architecture we have, and we've had to deal with that just as we've had to deal with bus speeds and complex event processing and other issues. Another issue that as you're thinking about the data, is related to the fact of the financial practices. Because remember, finance is another form of information. And what we found when we tried to do our capital projects was because, as the next point points out, we're blurring IT and field operations, it's caused our financial people fits. And the way we report the data that's collected, how accounts are set up, are actually having to be changed, and along with the business processes, for the fact that we're effectively merging this into the field. The lack of standards, as we mentioned, is an impact, and we're certainly seeing that in-home devices are particularly challenging, and we're working very hard to try to get that opened and work through the standards. Another one is the internal standards group. We have a tendency, if you're looking at data, if you're looking at these systems, to think about all of this neat new stuff we can do. Truth is what we found is that if the business is going to accept it, you need to consider some really mundane things like getting it through the standards process. So when they put a sensor on a pole, it doesn't block the ability of them to work on the pole and take down the transformer. So when we've been looking, one of the things we learned is we didn't build in enough time initially for all of those internal standards groups to do what they needed to do to make sure that we could continue to do what we fundamentally are, which is a utility. So we've embraced that, and that's been a tremendous help. Another one is the metering, and that is in meter data, everybody thinks that's pretty straightforward. We found that's not true. Quantity of meter, how much you're sending back, impacts on OMS, what you can do. We've had challenges with if you send things that are non-utility related, does that make you now a public carrier? FCC is looking into things like that with standards work that they have recently done surveys on. And then I think the last thing is that while we're working through all of this, the rest of the company isn't waiting for you to come down from the mountain. So you need to be phasing things in and doing things in such a way that the data that you're producing that generates useful information that really helps the utility run, not just sitting there and working on very long-term schemes that have very long-term paybacks that nobody really understands.